The universe, as it turns out, has a sense of humor. Dark, cruel, and twisted enough to make you want to punch it square in its metaphorical face. And the gods? They're real, all right, and absolute jerks. My name is Zorn Tavik, Supreme Commander of what remains of the Galactic Confederation fleet. It sounds impressive, but the reality is grim. 14 battered cruisers, 27 half-functioning fighters, and a luxury passenger liner pressed into service as a makeshift hospital ship. That's all we have left. Commander Tavik, the Void Eaters have breached the Aurelian system's outer defenses, my first officer, Kalanix, reported as she burst into the command center. Her azure skin had gone a sickly shade of periwinkle, and her cranial tendrils twitched violently, a sign I'd learned never boded well. I took a long pull from my canister of stimulant juice. Fantastic. Absolutely. Fantastic. How long until they reach the evacuation point? 27 hours, sir. Not nearly enough time. I slammed my fist on the hollow table, the display flickering under the impact. We still have over 4 million refugees waiting for extraction. Even crammed in like preserved meat cubes, we'd need 2 full days. Kalanix didn't need to say a word. Her expression told me everything. We didn't have 2 days. Really? You'd think unstoppable cosmic horrors devouring entire star systems might at least keep to a reasonable schedule, I muttered, then immediately regretted the snap. None of this was her fault. I'm sorry, she nodded, her tendrils loosening slightly. The Council of High Elders request your presence in an emergency session, sir. Of course they do, I muttered. Because what this crisis truly needs is more debate from people who've spent 4 centuries arguing about proper interspecies handshake etiquette. The council chamber was a riot of noise when I arrived. Representatives from all 17 remaining species of the Confederation shouted over one another, a cacophony of clicks, whistles, harmonic vibrations, and translated speech. Elder Pax Van Toy, an aged scion with reflective scales dulled by time, somehow managed to be heard without raising his voice. High Elder training, no doubt. Commander Tavik, he said, your assessment of our tactical position. The chamber fell silent. We're doomed, I said flatly. A ripple of shocked murmurs coursed through the room. You want the polite version? Fine. The Void Eaters have consumed 42% of Confederation space. More than 600 billion sentient lives lost, at least that's what we know. They can't be reasoned with. They can't be stopped with conventional weapons, and our most powerful quantum disruptors barely slow them down. At this rate, the entire galaxy will be consumed within 3 standard years. Surely there's something we haven't tried, chirped Elder Ricky, a diminutive avian whose feathers constantly molted from stress. I arched an eyebrow. We could try asking them nicely to stop eating reality itself. But considering they've ignored every attempt at communication and treat our strongest weapons as appetizers, I wouldn't bet on diplomacy. Elder Van Toy's inner eyelids flickered in irritation. Commander, this is hardly the time for sarcasm. With respect, Your Eminence, sarcasm is one of the few luxuries extinction hasn't taken from us yet, I replied. That's when Elder Morothean spoke. The Vorax Elder's voice was low but carried like thunder. His people's records stretched back 50,000 years, and when he spoke, even the translators softened. There is one option we have not yet considered. The chamber went so still you could hear the environmental systems cycling. No, Elder Vantoy snapped immediately. That is forbidden by the ancient compact. What option? I demanded, looking from one elder to another. Elder Theon's 8 eyes blinked in sequence, a Vorax sign of grave contemplation. The humans. The word landed like a bomb. Several elders gasped. One fainted outright. Elder Ricky's feathers detonated off his body in a panicked molt. Are you insane? Elder Vantoy hissed. We swore never to contact them again. Not after what happened on Proxima. Centuries had passed since the humans destroyed the Harvester fleet, yet their shadow still hung over the council. I knew the old stories better than anyone in that chamber, but Elder Theon cut me off, a breach of etiquette so rare it silenced the room. I was there, Vantoy, he said quietly. I saw what they did, and I'm telling you, we need them now. I looked around at the terrified faces of the council. Would someone please explain what the hell you're all talking about? Humans? I've never even heard of them. Elder Thon turned his ancient eyes toward me. You wouldn't have. Every mention of them was purged from the records. Their star system is quarantined, surrounded by automated warning beacons. By decree of the Confederation, and by agreement with the humans themselves, we stay away from each other. Why? I demanded. Because they terrify the gods, Elder Theon replied simply. Now, you need to understand something about our culture. We don't use the word gods lightly. The Confederation recognizes 11 transcendent species, beings that evolved beyond physical form millions of years ago. They rarely interact with mortals, but their power is unquestioned. They rearrange stars as easily as we move pieces on a board. They can create or destroy matter, bend the fundamental forces of the universe. And apparently, something about the humans scared them. The Void Eaters have already consumed 2 of the Transcendent Ones, Theon continued. The rest have fled beyond the galactic rim. They've abandoned us, but the humans didn't, I guessed. No, Theon said. The humans fought and they won. Though the cost was unimaginable. Elder Vantoy slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor. This is blasphemy! The ancient compact clearly states, The compact doesn't matter anymore, Elder Theon roared, his aged voice suddenly thunderous. Nothing matters if we're all dead, Vantoy. The humans are our only hope. Even if we wanted to contact them, I said. How? If they're quarantined, I have the coordinates, Theon replied, and the emergency communication protocols. The chamber erupted in shouts again, but I tuned it out. Our options were simple. Die now, or risk reaching out to a species so dangerous it terrified immortal beings who could juggle stars. Do it, I said, cutting through the noise. Send the message. 3 hours later, I stood alone in my quarters, staring out at the stars, wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake in Confederation history. The message had been sent, a desperate plea for help, broadcast directly into a system called Sol, whatever that meant. The door chimed. Enter, I called. Kalanick stepped in, holding a data tablet. Sir, we've received a response from the human system. My heart skipped several beats. That was fast. What did they say? She handed me the tablet. The message displayed only one word, coordinates. I almost laughed. Not hello. Not we received your message. Not even who are you. Just coordinates, direct, practical, slightly ominous. I like them already, I muttered. Send them the coordinates for the Aurelian system and our fleet position. And Kalanick's put the fleet on high alert. I have no idea what we're about to see. Yes, sir. She paused at the door. Do you really think they can help us against the Void Eaters? I shrugged. According to the Council, they scared immortal energy beings who can juggle stars. So either they're the salvation we desperately need, or they're so terrible that we'll be begging the Void Eaters to eat us faster. She didn't laugh. I didn't blame her. The waiting was excruciating. 6 hours passed with no sign of the humans. Meanwhile, the Void Eaters continued their relentless advance through the Aurelian system, consuming everything in their path, planets, stars. Even the very fabric of space-time left twisted and mangled in their wake. Commander, the sensor officer called out. We're detecting multiple spatial ruptures at the edge of the system. My heart sank.
The Void Eaters?
No, sir. The energy signature is different. I've never seen anything like this. The main view screen flickered to life, showing a section of seemingly empty space. Then, before our eyes, reality itself began to tear open. Not the chaotic, destructive rifts of the Void Eaters, but something far more precise, controlled. Through the precise cuts in the fabric of space-time came ships, human ships. There's no other way to describe them but wrong. Where Confederation vessels were sleek, symmetrical, and almost artistic, these were brutalist nightmares of angular armor and protruding weaponry. Our starships glowed with the soft blue shimmer of hyperfield generators. Theirs leaked an ominous red light from deliberately exposed power cores. They looked less like vessels and more like roving war foundries, designed by someone whose concept of aesthetic was maximum intimidation. There are over 3,000 of them, Kalanick whispered beside me. I couldn't speak. Even at the Confederation's peak, we had never fielded more than 2,000 capital ships across the entire galaxy. The humans had casually deployed a larger fleet in answer to a single distress call. The communications array chimed. Incoming transmission from the human fleet, the comms officer announced, his voice trembling. Put it through, I ordered, straightening my uniform. The view screen shifted to reveal what could only be a human. It resembled several Confederation species, bipedal, bilateral, vaguely familiar, but stripped of our typical adornments. No scales, no feathers, no exoskeleton. Just pinkish tan skin, dark fur atop its head, and a military uniform bristling with symbols I couldn't decipher. "This is Admiral Mira Yoshida of the Terran Defense Force," the being said, its voice oddly melodic. "We received your distress call. Looks like you've got a bit of a pest problem. A bit of a pest problem. Trillions dead, entire worlds consumed, reality itself unraveling, and the human called it a pest problem." "I am Commander Zorn Tavik of the Galactic Confederation," I replied. "Thank you for responding, Admiral Yoshida. But I must warn you, these pests have annihilated everything we've thrown at them." The human's face did something unexpected. The corners of its mouth curled upward, revealing rows of blunt white teeth. Later I would learn this expression was called a smile. At the time, it looked predatory. "Yeah," Yoshida said. "We figured as much. That's why we brought the big guns." She gestured off-screen. "We've got evacuation ships ready for your civilians. Just tell us where to send them and we'll handle it." "Admiral," I said carefully, "I don't think you understand. The Void Eaters consume reality itself. They've destroyed entire star systems. Even the transcendent ones, what you might call gods, fled before them." That strange smile widened. "Gods? Oh, Commander Tavik, let me tell you something about gods. They bleed like everyone else. You just have to know where to cut." A cold shiver ran down my spine. I remembered Elder Theon's words. "They terrify the gods. Now," Yoshida continued, "let's get your people to safety. Then we'll introduce these Void Eaters to humanity. I think they'll find us rather indigestible." As the first wave of human ships moved toward the refugee gathering points with impossible speed, I couldn't help but wonder if we had just replaced one horror with another. At least for now, this horror was on our side. "Sir," Kalanix's voice broke my thoughts. "The human vessels are deploying something. I'm not sure what to call them. They look like soldiers, but—" She trailed off, eyes fixed on the tactical display. I stepped to her station. What I saw made no sense. Are those individuals? In open space? Yes, sir. Thousands of them. They're wearing some kind of armored suits, but they're not using vessels. They're just moving under their own power. On the display, swarms of tiny armored figures emerged from the massive human warships, propelling themselves toward the advancing front of the Void Eaters. Their weapons looked absurdly oversized, even for beings encased in battleplate. "This is suicide," I muttered. "What do they think they're doing?" "Fighting gods," Kalanix whispered. The evacuation began with brutal efficiency. Human shuttles, each 3 times the size of our largest transports, descended to the refugee gathering points. Their loading procedures would have horrified our Confederation safety regulators. Thousands of civilians at a time disappeared into the cavernous bays of those ships, and still the armored humans advanced, a living tide of steel and fury, closing on the monsters that devoured reality itself. Refugees were crammed into cavernous human cargo bays, freight holds designed for steel and machinery, not living beings. They weren't secured with our careful crash webbing, but with fast-expanding foam that hardened around them like protective cocoons. Crude, haphazard, terrifyingly effective. The human evacuation ran at 5 times our projected rate. They weren't gentle, but they were fast. As the last transports lifted off, Admiral Yoshida's face appeared on my display. "Your people are secured, Commander," she reported. "Now we're going hunting." "Admiral," I began, "I appreciate your confidence, but these entities have devoured entire Yeah, she cut in with a flick of her hand, that predatory smile flashing again. "Big, scary cosmic horrors. Very impressive. But here's the thing about cosmic horrors, Commander Tavik. They've never met humans before." The view screen shifted to a tactical display. "You might want to watch this," Yoshida added. "It's going to be one hell of a show." The human fleet pivoted as one to face the advancing wall of nothingness, the Void Eaters, a tsunami of annihilation rolling through space. Stars blinked out. Planets collapsed into dust. Even the lattice of space-time twisted and dissolved wherever the creatures spread, and against this impossible enemy, the humans sent individuals. Thousands of them. Armored figures no larger than dots on the display, flying straight into oblivion. "This is madness," I whispered. Kalanix stood beside me, her cranial tendrils rigid, a sign of total shock among her people. "Sir," she said softly, The sensors are registering power outputs from those suits beyond anything in our database. Each one is generating energy equivalent to a Confederation cruiser's main reactor. That's impossible, I said automatically. Apparently not for humans, she replied. The comm crackled. Commander Tavik, came Admiral Yoshida's voice, sounding almost amused. You might want to dim your visual sensors for the next few minutes. Before I could respond, the void between the human soldiers and the cosmic horror erupted with such blinding intensity that our screens polarized to maximum. Even so, the light burned into my retinas. When my vision cleared, I saw something no living being in the Confederation had ever witnessed. The Void Eaters were retreating. What did they do? I stammered. Shifted quantum detonation cascade, Yoshida said, as if she were describing a routine engineering test. Basically, we punch holes in reality faster than they can eat it, creating a feedback loop of dimensional instability. They find it uncomfortable. The casual way she explained a weapon that warped the foundations of existence chilled me to the core. Admiral, I said carefully, such technology is, this is just the warm-up act, she interrupted. Tactical was testing their response parameters. Now we bring in the heavy hitters. 7 enormous vessels detached from the largest human ship, gliding forward like silent predators. They were shaped like elongated pyramids studded with massive crystalline protrusions that pulsed with alien light. They have no weapons, I said, frowning at the sensor data. No visible weapons, Kalinix corrected. But those crystal formations are generating something. Sir, I don't know how to describe it. It's like they're creating localized bubbles where the laws of physics are being rewritten. Admiral Yoshida's voice came through again, but now it carried an unmistakable edge of glee. We call them reality anchors, custom-built for entities that manipulate dimensional boundaries. You can't fight something that consumes reality by shooting at it, Commander. You have to change the battlefield itself. The 7 ships glided into a precise geometric formation. A new voice joined the channel, clipped and mechanical. Reality anchor deployment complete. Physics lockdown in 3, 2, 1, execute. Between the vessels, space itself crystallized, shimmering facets of frozen vacuum interlocking like a cosmic trap. The Void Eaters caught within the zone began to slow, their amorphous forms contorting and hardening as they were forced into a single-dimensional state, their power stripped away. What's happening? I asked, unable to tear my eyes from the spectacle. We're forcing them to play by our rules now, Admiral Yoshida explained, her voice as sharp as a blade. No more phase shifting, no more dimension hopping, no more bending reality. Just matter versus matter. And when it comes to destroying matter, her smile was audible like a predator about to strike. Humans excel at that. The main human fleet surged forward, weapons igniting in a synchronized storm. These were not the refined hyperfield disruptors or elegant quantum resonance beams of the Confederation. Human weapons were brutal, overwhelming, and terrifyingly effective. Missiles that tore ragged holes in space-time. Beam weapons that seemed to ignite the vacuum itself. And kinetic projectiles so fast our sensors struggled to track them. Where once the Void Eaters had shrugged off the Confederation's most powerful assaults, they now writhed and shuddered. There is no better way to describe it, they screamed. Though space itself carried no sound, our sensor arrays translated their multidimensional vibrations into something audible, a cacophony so agonizing several of my bridge crew tore off their comlinks to escape it. They're hurting them, Kayla whispered in disbelief. They're actually hurting gods. I told you they bleed, came Admiral Yoshida's calm reply. Now we're going to find out what they're made of, literally. A new wave of human vessels darted forward, smaller, faster craft weaving through the Void Eaters like surgical instruments around a patient. They weren't attacking. They were cutting, extracting samples with terrifying precision. Admiral, I asked, alarm rising in my throat. What exactly are your people doing? Science, Commander, Yoshida answered without hesitation. Very aggressive science. Within minutes, the human fleet had corralled the Void Eaters completely. These entities, the same ones that had devoured half of Confederation space and sent immortal energy beings fleeing, were now trapped like specimens in a cosmic laboratory. Extraction teams report successful. Sampling, a new human voice reported over the channel. Preliminary analysis indicates exploitable biological components. Requesting permission to proceed with weaponization. Granted, Admiral Yoshida said. Fast track it. I want deployment options in 1 hour. I stared in disbelief. 1 hour? Admiral, Confederation research teams spend decades studying new life forms before even considering potential applications. Yoshida laughed, a sharp, startling sound. With respect, Commander, that might explain why you were losing this war.
We operate on slightly more aggressive timelines. While the research vessels dissected their prey, the rest of the human fleet maintained its relentless assault.
Under normal circumstances, I might have felt pity for any beings enduring such punishment. But these creatures had consumed trillions of lives without hesitation or remorse. So instead, I watched with grim satisfaction as humanity taught cosmic horrors the meaning of fear. Commander, Kayla said, her voice trembling, one of the Void Eaters is attempting some kind of communication. I glanced at her, startled. In all our encounters with these entities, they had never responded to any transmission. Admiral Yoshida, I relayed. Our sensors show one of the entities generating communication patterns. Yeah, we're picking that up too, she replied, her tone edged with dry amusement. Probably trying to negotiate now that their incorporeal asses are getting kicked. Typical bully behavior, terror and domination until someone hits back. Shouldn't we at least hear what they're saying? I suggested carefully. There was a pause before the Admiral answered. Fine, patch it through. What followed wasn't language as any Confederation species knew it. It was a flood of raw concepts, powerful, invasive, overwhelming. Everyone on the bridge recoiled at the psychic weight of it. Cease, mistake, not food. Communication error, what does that mean? Kayla whispered. A second transmission came, clearer, though no less unsettling, believed galaxy uninhabited. Signal misconstrued as invitation. Will depart. I blinked in shock. They thought the galaxy was empty. How is that even possible? The Confederation spans thousands of star systems. Not to them, Admiral Yoshida said, her voice suddenly cold. Look at the scale difference. To entities that operate across multiple dimensions and consume entire star systems, your civilizations might look as insignificant as bacteria. They probably didn't even realize. The alien entities pulsed with strange, fractured impressions. Notice, recognition, mistake, agreement honored, departing. I turned to the view screen. Admiral Yoshida's expression had gone unreadable, her voice carefully controlled. She admitted that humanity had encountered such beings before, 3 centuries ago by their reckoning. They had wandered too close to Earth. Humanity, she said, had explained boundaries to them. Given what I had just witnessed, I could only imagine how brutal that lesson had been. Trillions dead, worlds consumed, all of it, it seemed, the result of a misunderstanding. The Void Eaters hadn't even realized we were here. Yet Yoshida's face hardened when I suggested as much. Negligent genocide, she reminded me, was still genocide. Still, she conceded, if these beings were leaving peacefully now, humanity would not pursue them. We are not monsters, she said. The irony of hearing those words from a species that had just made godlike entities scream was not lost on me. The Void Eaters began to withdraw. Sensors confirmed their retreat, every last one accelerating toward the edge of the system. My bridge crew erupted into cheers, the first I had heard in months. I could not share their joy. A question gnawed at me. I pressed Yoshida further. Elder Theon had spoken of the ancient compact, a quarantine agreement between humanity and the Confederation. Were these events connected? The Admiral was silent for a long moment before answering that it was a complicated matter, better discussed face to face. 3 days later, I boarded her flagship. The ship's interior was stark, stripped of ornament, a place of function over form. Power seemed to hum through its walls. Yoshida received me in a communal chamber she called the officer's mess. In person, she was smaller than her presence on the screen, but no less commanding. She poured herself a drink, then began to tell me the truth. 342 years earlier, humanity had encountered its first alien species, the Harvesters. They believed resources existed only to be taken, and weaker species existed only to be exploited or exterminated. Confederation records noted their sudden disappearance centuries ago. Yoshida confirmed why. The Harvesters had made the mistake of attacking Earth. Humanity had erased them. All of them. It was during that war, she continued, that humanity developed weapons and technologies that drew the attention of the beings we called the transcendent. They, along with early Confederation envoys, proposed the Compact, an agreement to keep humanity confined to its own sphere, left to develop undisturbed, while the rest of the galaxy kept its distance. "You terrify the gods," I murmured, recalling Elder Theon's words. Yoshida laughed softly. Flattering, she admitted, but not the truth. What the Transcendent feared was not what humanity was, but what it was becoming. Where they had taken millions of years to ascend, humans had been impatient. Through genetics, cybernetics, and dimensional sciences, they had begun reshaping themselves. Her soldiers, she revealed, could generate as much energy as my cruisers, because the human race no longer accepted the limits of mortality. That was why the Compact had been signed. Humanity agreed not out of fear, but because they were too busy with their own projects to bother with galactic politics. I struggled to process it all. "What happens now?" I asked. The Compact had been broken. Their fleet was deep in Confederation space. "Now," Yoshida said, "we help you rebuild as a gesture of goodwill. Then we renegotiate the terms of coexistence." The way she said renegotiate carried the weight of inevitability. I warned her the High Council would demand assurances that humanity would not expand into our territory. Yoshida's laugh was genuine this time. "If they had wanted our stars," she explained, "they would have taken them centuries ago. Space was not what humanity sought to conquer. What then?" I asked. Her gaze was sharp, almost luminous. "Possibility. The limits of existence, and how to break them. The Void Eaters would not return," she promised. Humanity had made arrangements. I did not ask what that meant. Some answers were better left unspoken. Before I departed, Yoshida placed a small device on the table. A quantum communicator, tuned to humanity's emergency frequencies. "A gift," she said. "In case you ever need us again." I accepted it with unease. To hold such power was to hold both salvation and damnation in my hand. I hoped never to use it. Yoshida's smile was softer now, though no less unsettling. "So do we, Commander. But the universe is full of horrors. It's good to have friends who are worse." As my shuttle returned to the battered remnants of the Confederation fleet, I looked out at the human armada, thousands of warships built by a people who had refused the boundaries of biology, who had stared into the abyss and chosen to reshape themselves into something that could survive it. Elder Theon had been right to fear them. He had also been right to summon them. Because sometimes when you face monsters, the only hope is to call upon monsters of your own. And humanity, it seemed, had mastered the art of being just monstrous enough to endure, without losing what made them worth saving. Gods help anyone who tested that balance, because the humans certainly would not.